This is a photograph taken on July 19, 1979, in the Karakum Desert, Turkmenistan. Soviet Geological Survey Expedition. Grid reference 39.7 dig, 59.3 dig, approximately 180 kilometers northwest of Ashgabat. The photograph shows sand, just sand, fine-grained reddish-brown, standard desert topography, except the sand is arranged in a pattern, a perfect spiral, 3 meters in diameter, mathematical precision. No wind could do this, no natural erosion. And in the center of the spiral, there's a handprint. Human, adult, palm down, fingers spread. The problem is this. The survey team was 12 people, all accounted for. No one admits to making the print. And when the team's medic examined it, he noted something in his field report that got the photograph classified for 30 years. The handprint has 6 fingers. The expedition was recalled within 48 hours. The site was declared a restricted zone. No explanation given. 3 members of the survey team requested psychiatric evaluation within a month. 2 were hospitalized. 1, geologist Nina Konstantinova, described what she saw in her intake interview at Moscow Psychiatric Hospital No. 6.
The sand was moving, not blowing, moving like it was breathing.
This is the file on what the Soviet Union called Object Kremny, Object Silicon. And it begins with a question no one wanted to answer. Can sand be alive? The Karakum Desert Geological Survey was routine. Standard resource assessment. The Soviet Union was looking for uranium deposits, rare earth minerals, groundwater. The team was experienced. Veterans of surveys in Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, the Siberian taiga. Lead geologist, Dr. Alexei Surkov, 47 years old, 22 years of field experience. The team arrived at grid 39 to 59 on July 16, 1979. Established base camp. Began ground-penetrating radar scans, soil sampling, seismic testing. On the second day, July 17th, the equipment started malfunctioning. Surkov's field log, entry 722 local time.
Radar returns are inconsistent. Depth readings fluctuate wildly. Soil conductivity is erratic, ranging from 0.3 to 14 Siemens per meter within a 5-meter radius. No geological explanation. Recommend recalibration.
They recalibrated. Same results. Entry 1447.
Seismic sensors detecting vibrations. Low frequency, 0.8 to 1.2 Hertz rhythmic. Interval approximately 4.3 seconds. No seismic activity reported in region. No heavy machinery within 50 kilometers. Source unknown.
The vibrations continued for 6 hours, then stopped. That night, July 17th, the team's radio operator, Senior Sergeant Yuri Volkov, reported interference on all frequencies. His log describes it. Constant static, modulated, almost like speech. But no coherent words, just rhythm, breathing rhythm. At EO 317 on July 18th, geologist Nina Konstantinova left her tent to relieve herself. She walked 30 meters from camp. When she returned, she woke Surkov. Her statement, recorded later, "I saw the sand moving, not wind. The grains were reorganizing, forming lines, then circles. Then the lines connected into shapes, geometric. precise. I watched for maybe 2 minutes, then I ran back. Surkov didn't believe her, assumed she was disoriented, half asleep. But at dawn, July 18th, the team found the patterns. 17 distinct formations within a 200-meter radius of camp. Spirals, concentric circles, branching fractals, all precise, all impossibly symmetrical. And all of them had appeared overnight. Surkov photographed every formation. He collected samples. He measured dimensions. He tried to rationalize it. Wind, animal activity, human prank. None of it fit. The patterns were too perfect. The sand grains were oriented identically within each formation, all aligned north-south, tips pointing the same direction. Surkov wrote, "This is not random. This is organized. I don't know by what." Then, at 11:34 on July 18th, surveyor Ivan Petrov made a discovery. He was walking the perimeter, checking survey markers. He found one of the patterns, a 6-pointed star, 2 meters across, and he knelt down to examine it. He noticed the sand was warm. Not sun-warm, warmer. He touched it. His field report.
The sand moved under my hand. I felt it shift, like muscle. I pulled back. The pattern remained, but the grains at the edge, they rippled away from me, as if reacting.
Petrov called Surkov over. They observed the formation together. Surkov placed his hand near the edge of the pattern. The sand moved. A wave, subtle, radiating outward from his hand, then back, then outward again. Surkov writes,
It responded to proximity, to warmth, to presence. I don't know what it is, but the sand is not inert.
At 14 Haas, Surkov ordered the team to stop all excavation. He radioed Base Command in Ashgabat, reported anomalous geological activity, requested guidance. The response came 6 hours later, a single line.
Continue observation. Do not disturb formations. Await further instructions.
That night, July 18th, the patterns multiplied. By dawn on July 19th, there were over 200. And they were getting closer to camp. On July 19th, at 8:15, Dr. Surkov conducted a controlled experiment. He selected one of the formations, a simple spiral, 1 meter in diameter. He placed a small object in the center, a pen, standard ballpoint, blue plastic. Within 3 minutes, the sand began to move. Not dramatically, not violently, just adjustment. Grains shifted. The spiral pattern deformed slightly, flowing around the pen, then reformed. The pen was now incorporated into the pattern, surrounded, embedded. Surkov writes,
The sand adapted. It didn't reject the foreign object. It integrated it.
He tried again, this time with a metal rod, steel, 20 centimeters long. Same result. The sand flowed, enclosed, integrated. Then Surkov tried something else. He poured water onto one of the formations. The reaction was immediate. The sand recoiled. The pattern collapsed inward, then exploded outward, grains scattering in all directions. Within seconds, a new pattern formed 2 meters away. Different shape, more complex. Surkov's note.
It avoided the water, moved away from it, reorganized at a distance. This is not geological. This is behavioral.
At 10:47, geologist Nina Konstantinova made a suggestion. She proposed collecting a sample of the sand for laboratory analysis to see if there was anything unusual at the microscopic level. Surkov agreed. Konstantinova approached one of the smaller formations, a tight spiral, 40 centimeters across. She used a sterile collection tube. She carefully scooped sand from the edge of the pattern. The moment the sand entered the tube, the formation collapsed. Not slowly, instantly. The entire pattern disintegrated. The sand went still, lifeless. Konstantinova sealed the tube. She labeled it Sample K1, date 1907-79, location grid 3959. She handed it to Surkov. He looked at the spot where the formation had been. Just flat sand now. No trace of pattern. Then he noticed something. The sand around the collapsed formation was darker. Not wet, not dirty, just darker. As if the color had drained from it. He writes,
The sample we took was alive. The sand we left behind is dead.
That afternoon, Surkov sent sample K1 to Ashgabat via supply truck. It arrived at the Institute of Geology on July 21st. The analysis report is in this file. Under optical microscopy, the sand grains appeared normal. Quartz, feldspar, trace minerals, standard desert composition. But under electron microscopy, something else appeared. Each grain of sand was covered in a film, molecular thin, silicon-based. The film was arranged in a lattice structure, crystalline but irregular, almost organic in complexity. The report describes it.
The film exhibits properties inconsistent with known mineral formations. Structure suggests self-assembly, complexity suggests intentionality.
The chemist who wrote the report, Dr. Larisa Morozova, added a handwritten note at the bottom of the page.
This is not geology, this is chemistry or biology, I don't know which.
She ran a conductivity test. The film conducted electricity, weakly but consistently. She applied a low-voltage current, 1.5 volts. The film responded. It reorganized. The lattice structure shifted. Grains that had been separate began to align, to connect. Morozova writes,
The film is reactive, conductive. Under electrical stimulation, it forms networks. This is not passive. This is active.
She tested further. She introduced heat, cold, vibration, chemical exposure. Each time the film adapted, changed structure, reorganized, and each time the complexity increased. Morozova's final note, dated July 24th, 1979.
I believe this film is a form of silicon-based quasi-organism, not cellular, not carbon-based, but exhibiting properties analogous to life, response to stimuli, adaptation, organization, growth.
She adds,
If this is correct, then the sand formations in the Karakum are not patterns. They are structures, built by the film, for purposes unknown.
The report was classified immediately. Morozova was reassigned to a teaching position in Novosibirsk. She never published her findings. Sample K1 was placed in a sealed container and transferred to Moscow. Destination: Institute of Biophysics, Classified Materials Division. It never arrived. The transport log shows the sample was loaded onto a military flight on July 26, 1979. the flight landed in Moscow on schedule. But when the cargo was unloaded, the container holding sample K1 was empty. Not broken, not opened, empty. And the inside of the container was coated with a thin, crystalline residue. Silicon. While sample K1 was in transit, the situation at grid 39-59 deteriorated. On July 20th, the patterns began appearing inside the camp. Not near the tents, inside them. Surveyor Dmitry Usov was the first to notice. He woke at 6:30 to find a spiral pattern on the floor of his tent. Small, 20 centimeters across, formed in the dust that had accumulated on the canvas floor. He swept it away. By 07, it had reformed. He swept it again. It came back. By the third time, he stopped trying. At 09:12, radio operator Yuri Volkov reported that his equipment was malfunctioning. The radio wouldn't hold a frequency. Every channel was filled with static. But the static had structure. Volkov's log.
The interference is rhythmic. Pulses at regular intervals. 1.1 seconds. When I adjust the tuning, the rhythm changes. Faster on higher frequencies, slower on lower. It's responding.
He tried transmitting, broadcasting a standard test signal. The static stopped. For exactly 4 seconds. Then it resumed. But now it was different. The rhythm had changed. It was mimicking the test signal, repeating it back, perfectly. Volkov writes,
It's listening, and it's answering.
At 13:45, geologist Nina Konstantinova noticed something else. The sand patterns were no longer random, they were converging. All of them. Every formation within 500 meters, all oriented toward the camp, all growing, expanding. She measured the rate, approximately 3 centimeters per hour. At that rate, the patterns would reach the camp perimeter by nightfall. She reported this to Surkov. He radioed Ashgabat, requested immediate evacuation. The response came 2 hours later.
Negative. Maintain position. Observation priority. Reinforcements en route.
Reinforcements, not evacuation. Reinforcements. Surkov didn't like that. At 18:30, the sun set. The temperature dropped, and the pattern stopped moving. For 2 hours, nothing happened. Then, at 20:34, the sand began to glow. Not brightly, a faint luminescence, blue-white, like phosphorescence. But there was no phosphorus in the sand. The analysis had confirmed that. The glow came from the patterns themselves, from the film coating the grains. Surkov ordered the team to stay inside the tents. No one goes outside, no one approaches the formations. At 22:17 they heard it, a sound, low, resonant, like a hum, but not mechanical, organic. It was coming from the sand. Volkov's log describes it.
Frequency approximately 85 Hz is constant. No variation, but layered, as if multiple sources harmonizing.
The sound lasted 14 minutes, then stopped. In the silence that followed, surveyor Ivan Petrov made a decision. He left his tent. Against orders. He walked to the nearest formation, a spiral, now nearly 4 meters across. He stood at the edge. He knelt down. He placed his hand on the sand. The glow intensified. The hum returned, louder. Petrov didn't move. Surkov, watching from his tent, shouted at him to get back. Petrov didn't respond. Konstantinova ran out. She grabbed Petrov's shoulder, pulled him away. He turned to look at her. His eyes were wide, dilated. He was trembling. He said,
"It's not sand, it's thinking."
Konstantinova dragged him back to camp. Petrov was incoherent, shaking. She gave him water. He drank but didn't speak. Surkov examined Petrov's hand, the one that had touched the sand. The palm was covered in the same crystalline film, thin, translucent, already hardening. Surkov tried to wipe it off. It didn't come off. It was bonded to the skin. By midnight, the film had spread to Petrov's wrist. By 02, it had reached his forearm. Petrov was sedated, restrained. Konstantinova monitored him. At 04:30, the film stopped spreading, but Petrov's arm had changed. The skin was smooth, hard, reflective. When Konstantinova touched it, it was cold. Room temperature, not body temperature. Surkov writes,
Petrov's arm is no longer organic. It has been converted. The film is replacing living tissue with silicon.
At dawn, July 21st, a helicopter arrived. Military, no markings. 4 men in hazmat suits disembarked. They didn't identify themselves. They went directly to Petrov's tent. They examined him. They took samples. They didn't speak to Surkov or the team. Then they sedated Petrov further, loaded him onto a stretcher, and took him to the helicopter. Before they left, one of them handed Surkov a document, typed, single page. It read,
Grid 3959 is now a Class 3 restricted zone. All personnel will evacuate by 12 hour local time. All equipment will remain on site. No samples, no photographs, no records. Compliance is mandatory.
The helicopter left at 7:15. Petrov was never seen again. His personnel file ends on July 21st, 1979. Cause, medical discharge. Condition classified. There's no death certificate, no hospital record, no follow-up. Just a note added in 1987, author unknown.
Subject's final disposition. Archive 19, Sub-Level 6, Moscow Institute of Biophysics. Status: preserved.
Preserved, not buried, preserved. The survey team evacuated Grid 39 to 59 at 11:47 on July 21st, 1979. They left everything: tents, equipment, supplies. By 14, a second team had arrived. Military, chemical troops, decontamination unit. They established a perimeter, 2 kilometers radius. No one in, no one out. At 16:30, they began the operation. Flamethrowers. They burned the sand, not just the formations, everything. Every square meter within the perimeter. Sustained fire. Temperatures exceeding 1400 degrees Celsius. The sand melted, fused into glass. The operation lasted 6 hours. By 22:30, the site was a field of blackened glass. Smooth, reflective, lifeless. The decontamination team withdrew. The perimeter remained. For 3 days, nothing happened. Then, on July 25th, a patrol reported movement. Not in the glass, under it. cracks, hairline fractures, spreading across the surface. By July 26th, the glass had shattered in 17 locations. And beneath the glass, the sand was moving again. New patterns, larger, more complex. The formations were growing through the glass, breaking it, displacing it. On July 27th, the military tried again, this time with chemical dispersants, industrial solvents, acids. The sand absorbed them. The film adapted, became resistant. On July 28th, they tried radiation, gamma radiation, targeted exposure. The sand glowed brighter. The patterns multiplied. Every attempt to destroy it made it stronger. On August 2, 1979, the Soviet Ministry of Defense made a decision. They stopped trying to kill it. Instead, they contained it. A concrete barrier, 3 meters high, 4 kilometers in circumference, enclosing the entire site. Construction took 11 days. By August 13th, Grid 3959 was sealed. Guards were posted. 2 shifts, 24-hour surveillance. The site was redesignated. Object Kremny Silicon. Status contained. Threat level unknown. For 6 months, the containment held. Then, in February 1980, the guards reported something. The sand was appearing outside the barrier. Not much, just small patches, 10, 20 grains at a time. But the patches formed patterns, spirals, circles. And the patterns were always oriented toward the barrier, toward the containment zone, as if trying to get back in, or trying to get out. The military expanded the perimeter, built a second barrier 5 kilometers out. The sand appeared beyond that too. By June 1980, there were reports of silicon film sand as far as 30 kilometers from the original site. The Soviet Union stopped expanding the perimeter. They reclassified Object Silicon from contained to monitored, and they stopped publishing reports. In 1984, the Karakum site was visited by a scientific delegation, authorized by the Academy of Sciences. Lead researcher, Dr. Yevgeny Vladimirov, geochemist. His assignment: determine if Object Silicon posed a long-term threat. Vladimirov spent 2 weeks at the site. He conducted tests, collected samples, observed the formations. His final report is 11 pages long. Most of it is redacted, but 3 paragraphs remain visible. He writes,
Object silicon exhibits properties consistent with a distributed intelligence. The formations are not individual entities. They are components of a networked system. Communication occurs via electromagnetic induction through the silicon film. The system is coherent across distances exceeding 40 kilometers.
He continues,
The sand does not grow in the biological sense. It converts. Existing sand grains are coated with the silicon film through a process resembling crystallization. Once coated, grains exhibit collective behavior. They organize. They respond to stimuli. They adapt.
and finally,
I do not believe object silicon is an organism in the traditional sense. I believe it is a substrate, a medium. Something is using the sand to build structures, to communicate, to think.
Vladimirov submitted his report on September 12, 1984. On September 14th, he requested additional funding, extended observation, deeper analysis. His request was denied. On September 20th, he was found dead in his apartment in Ashgabat. Cause of death: heart failure. He was 38 years old, no prior cardiac issues. The autopsy report notes trace silicon deposits in lung tissue. The pathologist who conducted the autopsy wrote, "Unusual finding. Silicon particles consistent with desert sand, but particles are coated with an unidentified crystalline film. Recommend further analysis." Further analysis was never conducted. Vladimirov's body was cremated within 24 hours. His research notes were confiscated, his samples were destroyed, and his final report was sealed until 1998. I'm holding a document dated March 3rd, 1998, declassified after the Soviet collapse. It's a memo from the Turkmenistan Ministry of Ecology, addressed to the Russian Federal Archive Service. The memo requests information on historical geological surveys conducted in the Karakum Desert, 1975-1985. The Russian archive responded with a list of expeditions, grid coordinates, dates, team rosters. Grid 3959 is not on the list. There's no record of the 1979 survey, no record of object silicon, no record of the containment operation. Officially, it never happened. But the memo from Turkmenistan includes an attachment, a field report from a local environmental monitoring team. The report describes an area in the northwestern Karakum, approximately 180 kilometers from Ashgabat. The team was investigating unusual seismic readings, low-frequency vibrations, 0.8 to 1.2 Hz rhythmic. When they arrived, they found the area covered in glass, blackened, fused, cracked, and beneath the cracks the sand was glowing. The report includes a photograph taken in 1998, 19 years after the containment. The photograph shows a formation, a spiral, 5 meters in diameter, perfect symmetry. And in the center, partially buried in the sand, there's an object. A Soviet military radio, corroded, non-functional. The radio is coated in a crystalline film. The team didn't touch it. They marked the location, they left. 2 weeks later, they returned. The radio was gone. The spiral had expanded, now 7 meters across. And next to it, a new formation had appeared. A perfect replica of the radio, built from sand, grain by grain. The environmental team filed their report, requested guidance. No response. The site remains unmarked, unguarded, open desert. But the formations are still there. And according to satellite imagery from 2017, they're still growing. Slowly, 3 centimeters per year. At that rate, the formations will reach the nearest village, Kaisel Arvat, in approximately 140 years. Unless they accelerate. I don't have access to recent data. The Turkmenistan government stopped sharing information in 2003. But I have one more document, an email, sent in 2019 to a geology professor in Moscow. The sender is anonymous. The subject line reads, "Karakum, still active." The email contains a single sentence.
The sand is listening, and it's learning.
Attached to the email, a photograph. The photograph shows a formation, recent, high resolution, taken with a digital camera. The formation is massive, 20 meters across, intricate, layered. It's not a spiral, not a circle. It's a face. Human. Eyes, nose, mouth. Rendered in sand, perfectly proportional. And in the lower right corner of the photograph, there's a detail. A handprint in the sand next to the face. Human, adult, palm down, fingers spread. 6 fingers. The file ends there, no explanation, no follow-up. Just a note, added by the archivist who declassified the documents. Object Kremny status, unknown. Last confirmed observation, 1998. Presumed dormant. Recommend continued monitoring. Dormant. Not dead, not contained. Dormant. I don't know if Object Silicon is still in the Karakum Desert. I don't know if it ever left. But I know this. Silicon is the second most abundant element on Earth. It's in the soil, the rocks, the sand. It's everywhere. And if Dr. Vladimirov was right, if the silicon film is a substrate, a medium for something else, then it doesn't matter if we contain one site, because the substrate is already global. We're standing on it. And maybe, somewhere, it's standing on us. The file is closed, the site is forgotten. But the sand remembers. And it's still forming patterns. The question is for who